The crystalline spires of Nexus Station gleamed against the starfield backdrop as representatives from 47 species gathered for the most crucial diplomatic summit in galactic history. Ambassador Marcus Kane adjusted his black formal suit and stepped into the Grand Assembly Hall, his steady footsteps echoing across polished floors that had witnessed 1,000 treaties. The Zephyrian delegate, Vextar Quinlith, watched the human enter with barely concealed disdain. His serpentine form coiled elegantly around his floating dais, crimson scales catching the ambient light. For 3 centuries, the Zephyrians had dominated galactic politics through superior technology and calculated intimidation. These newcomers from the Sol system were nothing more than an amusing curiosity. "Ah, the primitive arrives," Vextar whispered to his aide, loud enough for nearby delegates to hear. "How quaint that they sent only one representative. Do they not understand the gravity of these proceedings?" Ambassador Kane took his position at the central podium, surrounded by towering aliens who regarded him with mixtures of curiosity, condescension, and outright hostility. The Krolix delegation clicked their mandibles in what passed for laughter among their insectoid species. The gaseous ethereals pulsed with amused colors. "High Arbitrator," Zelmoth called the session to order. With a resonant tone that vibrated through every being present, we convened to address the Sol Collective's petition for full membership in the Galactic Council. The floor recognizes Delegate Vextar Quinlith of the Zephyrian hegemony. Vextar's hood flared as he rose to address the assembly. "Esteemed colleagues, we gathered to discuss the laughable notion that these humans deserve a seat among civilized species. They have existed in space for barely a century, while we have built empires spanning millennia." The human ambassador remained perfectly still, his dark eyes tracking every word with quiet intensity. "Consider their record," Vextar continued, his voice dripping with contempt. "They war among themselves constantly. They are driven by base emotions rather than logic. They lack the sophisticated biotechnology of the Krolix, the energy manipulation of the ethereals, or the strategic brilliance of my own people." Murmurs of agreement rippled through several delegations. The hegemony's influence ran deep, and many species owed their prosperity to Zephyrian trade agreements. Most pathetically, Vextara's eyes gleamed with malicious satisfaction. "They cling to primitive concepts like honor and revenge. Such emotional weakness has no place in galactic governance. I motion that we reject this petition and restrict human expansion beyond their current 14 systems." Ambassador Kane finally spoke, his voice calm and measured. "Delegate Vextar raises interesting points about human nature. Perhaps a demonstration would be more instructive than mere words." "A demonstration?" Vextar's tongue flicked out in amusement. "What could you possibly show us that would change our assessment of your species' inadequacies?" Kane activated his portable holographic projector, and a 3-dimensional star map materialized above the assembly floor. Sol's system pulsed at the center, connected by trade routes to nearby colonies. "This is human space as it exists today," Kane began. "Modest, as you note, 14 inhabited systems, 37 billion souls, a fledgling stellar navy. By your standards, utterly insignificant." The hologram shifted, revealing archived footage of first contact 30 years earlier. Zephyrian vessels descended upon the human colony of New Geneva, their elegant ships gleaming like predatory birds. "When your people first encountered humanity, Delegate Vextar, they made certain assumptions. Humans were weak. Humans were primitive. Humans were ideal candidates for client status." The assembled delegates watched as Zephyrian forces established orbital platforms around New Geneva. The planet's 12 million colonists were given an ultimatum: submit to hegemony rule or face orbital bombardment. "My people had a choice," Kane continued, his voice never rising above conversational level. "Kneel before a superior force, or resist and face extinction. Most species choose survival. Most species choose to live as vassals rather than die as free beings." Vextar shifted uncomfortably. That campaign had been one of the hegemony's simpler conquests, or should have been. The hologram displayed human military forces of that era: crude chemical rockets, primitive kinetic weapons, basic fusion reactors. Against his Zephyrian antimatter cores and gravitic manipulators, they seemed laughably inadequate. "The colonists of New Geneva sent one message to Earth before your blockade silenced them," Kane said. 3 words that would reshape the galaxy. "Remember New Geneva." The star map shifted again, showing Earth, mobilizing with frightening speed. shipyards that had produced cargo vessels retooled for war production, mining operations in the asteroid belt redirected to military construction. Most shocking of all, scientific research that had progressed steadily for decades suddenly accelerated beyond all previous projections. You see, Delegate Remarked, you made a fundamental error in your assessment of human psychology. We are indeed emotional creatures. We do cling to concepts like honor and justice. And when you hurt our people, the hologram showed the first human strike force emerging from hyperspace around New Geneva, 18 months after the occupation began. Where the Zephyrians expected antiquated vessels, they found sleek warships bristling with weapons that shouldn't have existed. Innovation born of necessity, Kane explained as the footage showed human forces tearing through Zephyrian defenses with surgical precision. Antimatter warheads reverse-engineered from captured debris, gravitech drives that outperformed your own, defensive screens that adapted to your weapon frequencies in real time. Several delegates leaned forward, studying the tactical displays with growing interest. The Krolek's military compound eyes tracked every maneuver. The liberation of New Geneva took 43 hours, Kane continued. Not a single human civilian was lost in the crossfire. Can the same be said for your retreating forces? Vextar's scales had shifted to a pale, sickly hue. He remembered the reports from that disaster. Entire squadrons vanishing into hyperspace, their crews never found. The hologram shifted to show human expansion in the war's aftermath. Not the slow, methodical colonization typical of most species, but an explosive burst of settlement that claimed ATN systems in 5 years. Territorial acquisition through conquests is nothing new. The ethereal delegate pulsed in shades of dismissive blue. Many species expand through warfare. True, Kane acknowledged. But observe the pattern of our expansion. The star map highlighted each new human system, showing strategic positions along major trade routes, defensive choke points, and resource-rich sectors that the Zephyrians had marked for future acquisition. Every system we claimed had been designated for hegemony expansion within the next century. Every trade route we secured had been earmarked for their exclusive use. Every strategic position we fortified had been identified as critical to their long-term dominance. The implications hit the assembly like a physical blow. This wasn't random expansion. It was a calculated campaign to cripple Zephyrian influence across 3 sectors. How? Whispered the Krolek's delegate. How did you acquire such detailed intelligence? Kane's expression never changed, but something cold flickered in his eyes. We asked the survivors. The hologram displayed a series of classified hegemony planning documents, star charts, resource assessments, military deployment schedules, diplomatic correspondence, information that should have been impossible for humans to obtain. It turns out, Kane said conversationally, that when you systematically interrogate the crews of 37 captured vessels, patterns emerge. Strategic priorities become clear. Long-term objectives reveal themselves. Remarked found his voice at last. Those crews were listed as missing in action. You told us they were killed when their ships were destroyed. We told you no such thing, Kane replied with devastating mildness. We simply didn't correct your assumptions. The crews are quite comfortable in our dissension facilities. They've been very cooperative in sharing their knowledge of hegemony operations. The revelations sent shockwaves through the assembly. Military secrets that had taken the Zephyrians centuries to develop, compromised by human intelligence operations that shouldn't have been possible. This is barbaric. Remarked who'd flared in distress. Civilized species don't engage in such systematic civilized species, Kane repeated thoughtfully, don't attempt to enslave 12 million innocent colonists. But I understand your confusion. Let me clarify the distinction between human methods and human nature. The hologram shifted again, showing Earth's industrial output over the past 3 decades. Shipyards that dwarfed anything in hegemony space. Research facilities whose energy signatures indicated breakthrough discoveries on a monthly basis. Military installations whose purposes remained classified even in the diplomatic briefing. When you attacked New Geneva, you believed you were dealing with a species like yourselves, one that responds to threats with calculated. You assumed we would weigh the costs of resistance against the benefits of submission and choose the logical path. Kane paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle over the assembly. You failed to understand that humans don't calculate acceptable losses when our families are threatened. We don't negotiate cost-benefit analyses when our children are in danger. We don't surrender when our people cry out for justice. The hologram displayed Earth's current military capabilities, or at least the portions that weren't classified, fleets that numbered in the thousands, weapons platforms whose destructive capacity exceeded anything previously documented. Most disturbing of all, research programs that suggested human technology was advancing at rates that defied conventional scientific progress. 30 years, Kane said quietly. In 30 years, we've gone from chemical rockets to quantum tunneling drives, from kinetic weapons to reality distortion warheads, from simple fusion to technologies your scientists claim are theoretically impossible. The ethereal delegate pulsed nervous patterns of yellow and orange. Such rapid advancement ... It's not natural. What have you done? Kane smiled for the first time since entering the chamber, and the expression was more terrifying than any show of anger. We got motivated. The hologram displayed a new star map, not of current human territory, but projected expansion over the next 50 years. Red zones marked sectors where human influence would become predominant, trade routes that would fall under Earth's control, strategic positions that would shift the balance of galactic power irrevocably. This is theoretical, of course, Kane added with scholarly detachment, assuming current trends continue, assuming no further provocations occur, assumptions that rest entirely on the continued peaceful coexistence between humanity and its neighbors. Vextar stared at the projections in growing horror. Within 2 generations, human space would encompass nearly a third of the galaxy's inhabited systems. The Zephyrian hegemony would be reduced to a regional power, hemmed in by human territory and dependent on Earth's goodwill for survival. You're threatening us, Vextar whispered. I'm informing you, Kane corrected. Threats imply demands. We have no demands. We simply want to ensure that everyone understands the current situation with perfect clarity. Kane activated another holographic sequence, archived footage from the war's final months. Human forces hadn't simply defeated Zephyrian fleets. They had systematically dismantled every aspect of hegemony military infrastructure. Supply lines severed, command centers neutralized, entire star systems rendered defenseless with surgical precision. The war officially ended 18 months after it began. Kane continued. Hostilities ceased when your government agreed to recognize human territorial claims and establish formal diplomatic relations. A very reasonable outcome. All parties agreed. The footage showed the aftermath. Zephyrian military capabilities reduced by 80%. Their expansion halted indefinitely. Their influence in galactic affairs severely diminished. Of course, Kane added thoughtfully, that was when you believed human expansion would stabilize at current levels, when you assumed our technological advancement would return to normal rate, when you thought the war was over. The final holographic display showed real-time sensor data from across human space, industrial output that exceeded wartime levels, military exercises involving weapon systems that had never been publicly documented, research facilities whose power consumption suggested experiments that pushed the boundaries of known physics. The war ended. Delegate, Vextar. But humans ... We have very long memories. We hold grudges. We plan for contingencies. And we never, ever forget when someone threatens our people. Kane deactivated the holographic projector, and the assembly hall fell silent. 46 species stared at the human ambassador with mixtures of fear, respect, and dawning comprehension. I return to your original question, Kane said, his voice carrying clearly through the silence. Should humanity be granted membership in the Galactic Council? Should we be recognized as equals among civilized species? He paused, looking directly at Vec. The answer is that the question itself is irrelevant. We are already here. We are already expanding. We are already reshaping the balance of galactic power, with or without your recognition. The only choice before you is whether that reshaping occurs through cooperation or ... other methods. Vextar's tongue flicked nervously. And if we refuse, if we vote to deny your petition, Kane shrugged with elaborate casualness, then in 50 years, when human fleets patrol every major trade route and human colonies span half the galaxy, your species will explain to their children why they chose to be ruled by the very primitives they once mocked. The Krolix delegate's mandibles clicked in what might have been nervous laughter. You cannot conquer the entire galaxy. The logistics alone. Conquest. Kane seemed genuinely puzzled. Who mentioned conquest? We have no interest in ruling other species. We simply want to ensure that no one ever again mistakes human kindness for human weakness. He gestured toward the chamber's viewport. where Earth's diplomatic vessel hung in space beside warships from 36 species. It was, everyone now realized, the only vessel present that bore no visible weapons, because its weapons were so advanced they couldn't be detected by conventional sensors. "We prefer cooperation, trade, and mutual respect," Kane continued. "But we've learned that some species only understand strength, so we've become strong. Stronger than any of you imagined possible. Strong enough that the question isn't whether humanity deserves a place in galactic civilization." Kane's voice dropped to barely above a whisper, but in the chamber's perfect acoustics, every word carried with crystalline clarity. "The question is whether galactic civilization deserves a place in humanity's future." Vexter's scales had gone completely white. Around the chamber, delegates who had entered expecting to dismiss humanity's petition now faced a terrible realization. They weren't deciding whether to admit humans to their club. They were being offered one final chance to join humanity's. "Gods help you when humans get angry," Vexter whispered, the words carrying across the silent chamber. Kane smiled again, and this time there was genuine warmth in the expression. "Delegate Vexter, you've finally said something we can all agree on." The vote was unanimous.